San Quentin, Secrets from Death Row. The Last Confession. Before we dive in, remember, dark stories like this deserve a dark audience. If you want more tales of betrayal, blood, and secrets hidden inside America's deadliest prisons, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments if you could survive a single night inside San Quentin. Now, let's begin. The cell block was silent, except for the low hum of fluorescent lights and the metallic echo of keys sliding against iron bars. Death Row inside San Quentin was not just a place where men awaited execution. It was a graveyard for secrets, and on that night, one of those secrets clawed its way to the surface. At precisely 2:17 a.m., Correctional Officer Daniel Mercer made his routine patrol down East Block. He paused outside cell 42, where inmate Marcus Alvarez, convicted of a brutal double homicide in Oakland, sat upright on his cot, eyes wide, whispering to someone unseen. Alvarez had been on death row for 12 years, awaiting lethal injection. He was a man hardened by silence, never speaking to reporters, never showing remorse. Yet now, his lips moved rapidly, trembling as though the weight of a decade's guilt pressed down on him. Mercer leaned closer, catching fragments of Alvarez's words. "It wasn't me, the one you're looking for is still out there, under the bridge, the blood." Before Mercer could press further, Alvarez stopped, his eyes rolling back. His body convulsed violently, and within seconds he collapsed onto the concrete floor. Medical staff rushed in, but by dawn Marcus Alvarez was declared dead. Official cause: heart failure. Unofficial whispers: poisoned. The prison moved on like it always did. Death Row was a place built on routine. Men died, the world shrugged, and the cells filled again. But something about Alvarez's final words stuck with Mercer. A confession that didn't sound like a confession. A dying man claiming innocence after 12 years of silence. By noon, Alvarez's body was wheeled out in a black bag, but not before the prison chaplain noticed something clutched in his hand. It was a folded scrap of paper, damp with sweat and blood. Inside, a single line written in shaky script: "Find the bridge before he does." The words spread like wildfire among the guards, sparking rumors of hidden crimes and long-buried evidence. Mercer, unable to shake the look in Alvarez's eyes, decided to dig deeper. He pulled Alvarez's old case file, thick with photographs and reports, detailing the murder of a young couple in Oakland. But something about the timeline didn't add up. The crime scene photographs showed a brutal stabbing, yet the autopsy suggested the killer's hand was unusually steady, precise, almost surgical. Alvarez was a gang enforcer, notorious for reckless violence, but surgical? That wasn't his style. Mercer visited the prison's archives, digging through dusty boxes of legal motions, appeal transcripts, and investigative notes. Buried deep, he found a sealed report from 2009. A witness statement never introduced at trial. A homeless man had claimed to see someone fleeing the scene near the Bay Bridge, not Marcus Alvarez but a taller man with a limp. The report was marked unreliable and buried under pages of red tape. That night, Mercer couldn't sleep. Alvarez's words rang in his ears: "It wasn't me, the one you're looking for is still out there." Driven by instinct, he drove out to the Bay Bridge at 3 a.m., parking his car where the witness claimed to have seen the figure. The city lights reflected off the water, the wind cutting sharp through the night. He scanned the shoreline until his flashlight beam caught something buried in the mud beneath the pylons, a rusted lockbox half covered by years of sediment. Mercer dragged it free, his heart pounding as he pried it open. Inside lay a knife, its blade still faintly stained, and a photograph of the murdered couple, with the word "Next" scrawled in red ink across the back. But before Mercer could process what he was holding, he felt it, the unmistakable sensation of eyes watching from the shadows. He spun around, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the dark. On the far side of the embankment, a figure limped away into the night. And that was the moment Mercer realized Alvarez wasn't lying. Someone else had committed those murders. Someone who had never been caught. Someone who might still be killing. When Mercer reported the discovery to his superiors the next day, the evidence was confiscated, locked away in an evidence locker he would never see again. The official word: chain of custody violation. Unofficially, a warning to stop digging. But Mercer couldn't stop. He had already stepped too far into the shadows. And the more he pulled at the threads of Alvarez's last confession, the more he realized San Quentin wasn't just holding killers, it was hiding them. And then came the night the first anonymous letter arrived at Mercer's home. No return address. No fingerprints. Just one line written in the same shaky hand Alvarez had used hours before his death. "You should have left the bridge alone." The man with the limp. San Quentin has always been more than a prison. Perched on the edge of San Francisco Bay, it looms like a fortress of concrete and iron, its walls holding some of America's most dangerous men. Death Row, especially, has earned a reputation that chills even hardened criminals. Charles Manson walked these corridors. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, waited here for execution. Dozens of names that once terrorized the public eventually ended up in this cold wing, where each day is measured by the sound of keys and the slow march of time toward a needle. It was against this backdrop that Officer Daniel Mercer found himself haunted by the image of a shadowy figure limping away under the Bay Bridge. What made Alvarez's last words more disturbing was that they echoed an old rumor that had circulated years earlier, a whisper among inmates: "There's a man out there who kills and never gets caught. He's the one that feeds Death Row." Mercer dug deeper into the case files. He requested transcripts from Alvarez's trial, poring over testimony line by line. The prosecution had painted Alvarez as a remorseless gang enforcer. But in the cross-examination of one medical examiner, Mercer found a single detail that had been ignored. The stab wounds showed precise insertion, minimal tearing, something consistent with training, maybe even medical knowledge. Alvarez had no such background. Then came the break. In the prison's archive, Mercer uncovered an old booking photo of a drifter who had once been held briefly at San Quentin for burglary in the late 1990s. A tall man with a scar running down his cheek, and in the picture, one leg bent awkwardly, suggesting an old injury. The man's name, Raymond Keller. His record was short, nothing compared to the lifers around him, but the timing was uncanny. Keller had been released weeks before the Oakland double murder Alvarez was blamed for. Mercer cross-checked parole records and found something stranger. Keller had disappeared after his release. No forwarding address, no documented employment, no official trace. It was as if he had stepped off the grid completely. Meanwhile, Alvarez's final note: "Find the bridge before he does," gnawed at Mercer. He thought of the lockbox, the knife, the scrawled word next. If Keller was real, if he was alive, then the case Alvarez died for wasn't closed at all. It was still wide open. But Mercer wasn't the only one asking questions. Journalists had long circled San Quentin like vultures, hungry for stories of corruption or injustice. One reporter in particular, Emily Harris, had written about questionable convictions tied to Death Row in the early 2010s. Mercer reached out. When he told her what he'd seen under the Bay Bridge, she went pale. Months earlier, she had been investigating a series of cold cases across the Bay Area, stabbings with eerily similar signatures. All unsolved. One detail connected them: eyewitness descriptions of a man with a limp. Harris shared photographs of crime scenes from San Jose, Richmond, and Oakland. Victims ranging from drifters to young couples, all murdered between 2003 and 2016. The wounds were consistent. The knife was always the weapon. And in two of the reports, witnesses swore they had seen a tall man dragging one leg as he walked away. The implications were terrifying. If Keller was behind these killings, he had been active for nearly 2 decades, hiding in plain sight while others were convicted, tried, and even executed for crimes that may not have been theirs. Mercer wanted to take the evidence to his superiors again, but he knew what would happen. The prison thrived on finality. Cases needed to be closed, convictions upheld, executions carried out. To admit even one wrongful conviction on death row would unravel decades of legal certainty. It was easier to bury the truth than confront it. That night, as Mercer drove home, headlights appeared in his rearview mirror, following too closely for too many miles. He turned down side streets, but the car stayed with him until he pulled into his driveway. Only then did the vehicle roll past slowly, its driver obscured by shadow. On his porch, an envelope waited, taped to the door. Inside, a single Polaroid, a blurry image of the Bay Bridge at night. Written across the bottom in jagged letters, "You're next." The weight of the prison's silence pressed harder now. Mercer realized he wasn't just chasing the truth, he was being hunted for it. And when he returned to San Quentin the next morning, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. Alvarez's cell, long since emptied after his death, had been sealed off by order of the warden. Officially, it was under maintenance. Unofficially, someone didn't want anyone to see what Alvarez had left behind. But Mercer knew one thing for certain. Alvarez had not gone to his grave alone. He had left behind a trail, and whoever this man with the limp was, he was still walking free. And then came the news that broke the case wide open. A fresh body had been found, less than 20 miles from the prison walls. Same knife wounds. Same precision. And according to witnesses, a tall man with a limp was seen leaving the scene. For Mercer, this wasn't just about Alvarez anymore. San Quentin wasn't just the keeper of condemned men. It had become the perfect cover for a killer who never should have been free. The final reckoning. The discovery of a new body so close to San Quentin ripped open wounds that the state had worked hard to keep stitched shut. The press circled immediately. Copycat killing, officials called it, insisting it had no connection to Marcus Alvarez or his old conviction. But for Officer Daniel Mercer and journalist Emily Harris, the pattern was undeniable. The victim was a 29-year-old dock worker from Richmond. He had been stabbed multiple times, each strike precise, leaving wounds nearly identical to those that had condemned Alvarez years before. Witnesses once again described the same figure, a tall man with a limp, vanishing into the fog that rolled in from the bay. Emily Harris pushed her editors to run the story. She gathered Alvarez's sealed court files, the witness reports dismissed at trial, and the similarities across unsolved Bay Area stabbings. But before the article could be published, she was warned off. Two of her sources inside the prison suddenly refused to talk. One admitted quietly, "San Quentin doesn't want the past reopened. Too much money, too much reputation, too many sentences at stake." Mercer felt the same pressure inside the walls. He was pulled into a meeting with the warden and two men in suits he didn't recognize. They questioned his obsession with Alvarez and reminded him of his duty to uphold security, not chase conspiracy theories. When he pressed them about the lockbox, the knife, and the Polaroid threat, they dismissed him with a single phrase, "chain of custody issues." In other words, buried. But the killings wouldn't stay buried. Through Harris's contacts, Mercer tracked down families of other victims. A young couple murdered in Oakland in 2003, a homeless veteran killed near Richmond in 2009, a university student stabbed in San Jose in 2014. All unsolved. All showing the same surgical wounds. Each time, someone else was arrested or accused. And in two cases, those suspects had ended up on San Quentin's death row, awaiting execution. The weight of it hit Mercer like a blow. Death Row, the place designed to hold the worst of the worst, had become a graveyard not only for guilty men, but for the innocent, scapegoats who had taken the fall while the real killer kept striking. And the evidence pointed again to Raymond Keller, the drifter with the limp. His trail was faint but never fully gone. A hospital record from 1995 confirmed a car accident that had shattered his hip, giving him his lifelong limp. A parole officer's forgotten note hinted at violent tendencies. A prison nurse years later recalled treating an inmate who claimed Keller once bragged about feeding the row, his twisted way of saying he left others to take his place behind bars. But every time Mercer and Harris got close, the evidence slipped away. Files misplaced. Witnesses retracting. Leads cut short by silence. It was as though Keller wasn't just a fugitive, he was protected by the very system that claimed to hunt him. Then came the night that sealed the story. Harris received an anonymous tip directing her to an abandoned warehouse near the docks of San Francisco. Mercer insisted on going with her. Inside, beneath broken rafters and the smell of rust, they found another lockbox. This one contained photographs, dozens of them, of crime scenes across the bay. Some matched public cases. Others were never reported. Victims no one had ever identified. And taped to the lid was a single note, "Still here. Still watching." Mercer felt his blood freeze. Because the handwriting matched Alvarez's dying scrawl. Which meant one of two things. Either Alvarez had been in contact with the real killer, or someone inside San Quentin had forced Alvarez to carry a secret he never chose to hold. The revelation was devastating. It suggested a chilling possibility, that death row wasn't just a waiting room for condemned men. It was a stage, a carefully managed illusion, one where wrongful convictions covered for unsolved killings that might have implicated people far beyond one limping drifter. When Harris tried to publish, her editors pulled the story at the last second, citing legal concerns. Mercer was transferred off death row duty within a week. The message was clear: stop digging or lose everything. But the killings didn't stop. Months later, another body was discovered in Vallejo. Same wounds. Same whispers of a limping man seen near the scene. To this day, the case of Marcus Alvarez remains officially closed, his guilt never overturned, his execution prevented only by his sudden death. The name Raymond Keller never appears in any official database of Bay Area suspects. And the lockbox photographs? Classified, sealed in evidence rooms the public will never see. What remains are the whispers. Inmates on death row still talk about the man with the limp, a shadow who lives on the edge of the bay feeding the row, leaving others to pay for his crimes. Guards like Mercer call it the prison's darkest secret, one that the system will never admit. because in San Quentin, truth is as dangerous as any inmate. And sometimes the real killers walk free while the innocent die behind bars. So the next time you hear that death row is where justice ends, remember this: justice depends on the story we're told. And in San Quentin, the real story may never see daylight. If you think this was the darkest secret the prison has hidden, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe, because the next case will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice.